is ever the blackest of lies. Alfred Lord Tennyson. Presume not that I am the thing I was. William Shakespeare. Prologue. Valley of the Fae. Mists, shimmering silver fingers, rose over the pale green water of the lake. They twined and twisted toward a sky quietly gray, while in the east, over the hills, a pink blush waited like a held breath to waken. In the chill of dawn, Keegan O'Broin stood by the lake and watched the day become. A day, he knew, of change and choice, of hope and power. He waited, like that held breath, to do his duty, and his hope was he'd be back at the farm before noon. Chores to do, he thought, and more training, of course. But at the home place, at the signal, he stripped off his boots and his tunic. His brother Harkin did the same, as did near to 600 others. They came not just from the valley, the young and the not-so-young, but from every corner of Tallav. They came from the south, where the pious prayed their secret prayers, from the north, where the fiercest of warriors guarded the Sea of Storms, from the capital in the east, and from here in the west. For their chieftain, their Taoiseach, was dead, his life given to save the world. And as it was written, as it was told, as it was sung, a new one would rise like those mists, on this day, in this place, in this way. He didn't want to be Taoiseach any more than Harkin did. Harkin, a cheerful boy of 12 years, the youngest allowed to participate in the ritual, was a farmer, blood and bone. Keegan knew his little brother thought of the day, of the crowds, of the leap into the lake as great fun. For Keegan, today he would keep an oath given to a man dying, a man who'd stood as his father since his own went to the gods, a man who'd led Tallav to victory over those who would enslave them, though it cost him his life. He had no desire to lift up the staff of the Taoiseach, to take up the sword of the leader of the clan, but he'd given his word, and so he'd dive into the water with all the other boys and girls, men and women. Come on then, Keegan. Harkin grinned, his raven wing mop of hair blowing in the spring breeze. Think of the fun of it. If I find the sword, I'll declare a week of feasting and dancing. If you find the sword, who'll tend the sheep and milk the cows? If I rise up as Taoiseach, I'll do all of that and more. The battle's done and won, brother. I grieve for him as well. And with his innate kindness, Harkin wrapped an arm around Keegan's shoulders. He was a hero, and never to be forgotten. And today, as he would want, as must be done, a new leader comes. With his blue eyes bright as the day, Harkin looked around at the crowd on the shores of the lake. We honor him, and all who came before him, all who will come after. Now Harkin jabbed an elbow in Keegan's side. Leave off the brooding. It's not as if either of us will come out of the water with Cossentord in our hand. More like to be Cara, as she's as clever in the water as a mermaid. Or Cullen, who I know has been practicing holding his breath under the water these past 2 weeks. So he would, Keegan muttered. Cullen, as fine a soldier as was born, wouldn't make a good chief. He'd rather fight than think. Keegan, a soldier himself at 14, one who'd seen blood, spilled it, knew power, felt it, understood that thinking mattered as much as the sword, the spear, the powers. More come to that. Hadn't he been taught just that by his father, and by the one who'd treated him like a son? As he stood with Harkin, with so many others, all chattering like magpies, his mother moved through the crowd. He wished she would dive today. He knew no one who could settle a dispute as handily, who could deal with a dozen tasks at one time. Harkin had her kindness, their sister, Aisling, her beauty, and he liked to think he had at least some of her canniness. Taryn paused by Aisling, who chose to wait with her friends rather than the brothers she currently disdained. Keegan watched her tip up Aisling's chin, kiss her cheeks, say words that made her daughter smile before she moved on to her sons. And here I have a scowl and a grin. Taryn ruffled Harkin's mop, gave the warrior's braid on the left side of Keegan's head a light tug. Remember the purpose of this day, as it unites us and speaks to who and what we are. What you do here has been done by those before for 1,000 years and more. And all who took the sword from the lake, their names were written before ever they were born. If the fates deem who rises, why can't we see? Why can't you, Keegan insisted, who sees the before and the yet to come? If I could see, if you could, or any, it would take the choice away. As a mother would, she put an arm around Keegan's shoulders, but her eyes, bright and blue like Harkin's, looked out over the lake and through the mists. You choose to go into the water, do you not? And who lifts the sword must choose to rise with it. Who wouldn't choose to rise with it? Harkin wondered. They would be Taoiseach. A leader will be honoured, but a leader carries the burden for us all. So they must choose to lift that as well as the sword. Quiet now. She kissed both her sons. Here is Margaret. Margaret O'Cally, once a Taoiseach herself and mother to the one now buried, had shed her mourning black. She wore white, a simple gown with no adornments but a pendant with a stone as red as her hair. They seemed to flame, the stone and her hair, as if they burned away the mists as she walked through them.
Oh my God, you're so
She wore her hair as short as that of the fairies who streamed in her wake. And the crowd parted for her. The chattering ceased to silence that spoke of respect and of awe. Keegan knew her as Marg, the woman who lived in the cottage in the woods not far from the farm. The woman who would give a hungry boy a honey cake and a story. A woman of great power and courage, who had fought for Tallaght, brought peace at deep personal cost. He'd held her as she'd wept for her son, as he kept his word again and brought her the news himself, though she had known already. He'd held her until the women came to comfort. And then, though he was a soldier, though he was a man, he'd gone deeper into the woods to shed his own tears.
Keep rolling back here.
Now she looked magnificent, and he felt a shudder of that awe inside his belly. She carried the staff, the ancient symbol of leadership. Its wood, dark as pitch, gleamed in the sun, through the mists that thinned and broke in pieces. Its carvings seemed to pulse. Inside the dragon's heartstone at its tip, power swirled. When she spoke, even the wind fell silent. Once more we have brought peace to our world with blood and sacrifice. We have through all ages protected our world, and through it all the others. We chose to live as we live, from the land, from the sea, from the fae, honouring all. Once more we have peace. Once more we will prosper, until the time comes round again for blood and sacrifice. Today, as it was written, as it was told, as it was sung, a new leader will rise, and all here will swear their fealty to Tallaght, to the Taoiseach who will take the sword from the lake of truth and accept the staff of justice. She lifted her face to the sky, and Keegan thought her voice, so clear, so strong, must reach all the way to the sea of storms and beyond.
Hi, Polly. Hello.
In this place, in this hour, we call upon our source of power. Let the one chosen and choosing this day honour, respect, and guard the fae. Let the hand that lifts the sword be strong and wise and true.
I just hate the charge rifle
This,
so freaking much.
only
Kat,
this,
you know this by now.
your people ask of you. The water, pale and green with its power, began to swirl. The mists over it swayed.
One in the bin behind me.
So it begins! She lifted the staff high.
The purple
They
right off
raced
ground.
toward the water. Some of the younger ones laughed or whooped as they dived, as they jumped. Those on shore cheered. Keegan heard the din of it all as he hesitated, as his brother went into the water with a cheerful splash. He thought of his oath, thought of the hand that had gripped his in those last moments of life on this plane. So he dived.
I was gonna drop my
He'd have
Volbeat.
cursed at the cold slap of the water, but saw no point in it. He could hear others do so, or laugh, even kick their way back to the surface.
I see one down here.
He shut off that part of him that could hear thoughts,
Absolutely beam
as
fused.
too many of them crowded
Push it
in.
up, try.
He'd sworn he would take to the water this day and dive deep,
I have no more light
that he would
ammo
take up
in
the
my
sword if it came to his hand.
now.
So he dived deep, deeper, remembering the times as a boy he'd done just this with his brother and sister.
Hold up.
Children on a summer day, hunting for smooth stones on the soft lake bottom.
I took all the light on this.
He could see others through the water, swimming down or over or up. The lake would push them to the surface if the air ran out of their lungs. As it was promised this day, no one who
Oh, so
entered the
much light
lake would
for
come
you.
to harm.
Take all that.
Still, the
There
lake
you go.
moved around him, swirling,
delivering.
sometimes
That's blue.
spinning,
I
he
have
could
no
see the
bats,
bottom
but
now.
It's okay.
and those smooth stones he'd gathered as a boy. Then he saw the woman. She simply floated, so at first he thought her a mermaid. Historically, the Mers abstained from the ritual here. They already ruled the seas and were content with that. Then he realized he only saw her face, her hair, red as Marg's, but longer and streaming back in the water. Her eyes, gray as shadows in smoke, struck some chord in him that was knowing. But he didn't know her.
I have zero, but it's
He
okay.
knew
No, 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 no.
every face in the valley,
I mean, if you guys
and
have
hers
one already,
wasn't
yeah,
of the valley.
I've got a ton of cells.
And
I have
yet,
cells, I have 7. I'm okay.
It was. Then, though he'd blocked himself, he heard her as clearly as he'd heard Marg on shore. He was mine, too. But this is yours.
Broke.
He knew it. And so do you.
We just have to make
The
sure they're not coming
sword
to
all
us, okay?
but
We don't have to
leaped into
necessarily-
his hand. He felt the weight of it, the power of it,
I cracked
the brilliance of it. He could drop it, swim on, swim away. His choice, so the gods said, so the stories said. He started to loosen his fingers and let that weight, that power, that brilliance slide away. He didn't know how to lead. He knew how to fight, how to train, how to ride, how to fly, but he didn't know how to lead others, not into battle or into peace. The sword gleamed in his hand, a shine of silver with its carving pulsing, its single red stone flaming. As he eased his grip, that shine dulled,
I mean,
the
unless
flame
there's a
began
rat
to
on this
gutter.
side, I think they all might be on the other side.
and she watched him.
I'm just gonna check real quick.
He believed in you.
Last two teams right in front of me.
Okay, okay, okay.
A
I'm coming
choice,
right back.
he thought. What bollocks. Honor left no choice. So he pointed the sword toward the surface, where the sun danced in diamonds. He watched the
We win
vision,
this
for she
free
was
if
nothing
they
more
don't
than
even make
that,
it through ring.
smile.
There's
Who
no way
are
they
you?
make it to the other side.
He demanded.
True.
We're both
Yeah, we just
going
have
to
to find
have
you.
to find out. The sword carried him straight up, an arrow from a bow. It cleaved through the water, then the air. The roar came up as the sun struck the blade, shot its light, its power across the water. He rode it to the thick, damp
One's behind
grass,
here.
then did what he knew he must. He knelt
I'm with you,
at
Isaac.
Margaret's feet. I would give this and all it means to you,
Good shit.
he said, as her son
We
had,
win these!
for there is none more worthy.
Sit in the pill.
My time is past. She laid a hand on his head. And yours begins,
The difference in diamond
She
and
took his
black, what
hand,
did I say?
brought him to his feet.
Yeah.
He heard
and I
nothing,
thought,
saw
like, Diamond was
nothing
like,
but
okay,
her.
finally getting used to these lobbies.
This
But
was my
Masters,
wish,
playing in those
she
lobbies was
murmured,
so
only for
difficult.
him.
That's
Why?
cool.
I don't know how to. She
Guys,
cut him off,
I spent
a
more
kiss
time
to
dead
his
than alive.
cheek. You know more than you think. She held out the staff.
One game away
Take
from
what's
Diamond. Let's get another
yours, Keegan
juicer,
O'Brien.
please, so we can all hit it.
When he took the staff, she stepped back.
I mean, I'm 400.
And do what comes next.
Okay, this better be a juicer because I need 30.
He turned.
Okay, how
They
about
watched
this?
him. So
I
many
do
faces,
okay,
so
no,
many
that's
eyes
good. That's a
watching
good
him.
too, then.
He recognized what churned inside him as
I
fear
have no idea.
and felt the shame of it. The sword chose him, he thought.
I almost thought
and
that
he
focus
chose
was
to
an
rise with
advantage
it.
and lost my shit.
There would be no more fear.
Oh, man.
He lifted the staff
I just-
so its
I don't
dragon's heart
know. I feel
pulsed
like
with
charge
life.
rifle is fun to use, I guess,
With this,
but
there will be justice on
ammunition
Tallav
doesn't
for all.
game.
Now
I'm
the
just
sword.
hating, guys. I'm just hating.
With this, all will be protected.
Wait, what is that?
I am Keegan O'Brien. All that I am or ever will be pledges this to the valleys, the hills, the forests and valleys, to the far reaches, to every fae. I will stand for the light. I will live for Tallav. And should the gods deem, I will die for Tallav. They cheered him, and through the roar of it, he heard Marg say, "Well done, lad. Well done indeed." So they raised him up, the young Taoiseach, and a new story began. Chapter 1, Philadelphia. Sitting on a bus that seemed to have a bad case of the hiccups, Breen Kelly rubbed at the drumming ache in her temple. She'd had a bad day that came at the end, thank God, of a bad week that had spilled out from a bad month
It's true. It's so
or
annoying.
two. She told herself to cheer up. It was Friday, and that meant 2 whole days before she'd be back in the classroom struggling to teach language arts to middle schoolers. Of course, she'd spend a chunk of those 2 days grading papers, doing lesson plans, but she wouldn't be in the classroom with all those eyes on her. Some bored, some manic, a few hopeful. No, she wouldn't stand there feeling as inadequate and out of place as any pubescent student who'd rather be anywhere else in the universe than the classroom.
Oh, there's a team. There's a team. There's a team.
She reminded herself teaching was the most honorable of professions, rewarding, meaningful, vital.
Yeah.
Too bad she sucked at it. The bus hiccuped to the next stop. A few people got off, a few people got on.
What?
She observed. She was good at observing because it was so much easier than participating. The woman in the gray pantsuit, phone in hand, frazzled eyes. Single mother heading home after work, checking on her kids, Breen decided. She probably never imagined her life would be so hard. Now, a couple of teenage boys, high tops, knee-length Adidas shorts, earbuds, going to meet some pals, play some horse, grab some pizza, catch a flick. An age, Breen thought, an enviable age, when a weekend meant nothing but fun. The man in black, he
Push that team. I
he
don't
looked
think they're
right
gonna
at
come
her,
here 'cause
looked
Jim's
deep,
blue, but-
so she cut her eyes away. He looked familiar. Why did he look familiar? The silver hair, the mane of it, made her think college
Changed it
professor.
on the- oh.
But no, that wasn't it. A college professor getting on the bus wouldn't make her mouth go dry or her heart hammer. She had a terrible fear he'd walk back, sit next to her.
Like, yo,
If he did, she'd never get off the bus. She'd just keep riding, going nowhere, getting nowhere, a continual loop of nothing. She knew it was crazy, didn't care. She surged to her feet, rushed toward the front of the bus with her briefcase slapping against her hip. She didn't look at him, didn't dare, but had to brush by him to make the doors. Though he stepped to the side,
There was a
she felt that her
team,
arm bumped his as she
I was
passed.
gonna say supermarket.
Her lungs shut down. Her legs went weak. Someone asked if she was all right as she stumbled toward the doors,
I just need a sight for my
but she
flight.
heard him inside her head.
Sorry for
Come home, Breen Siobhan.
Yeah,
It's
wait.
time you came home. She gripped the bar to keep her balance, nearly tripped on the steps, and ran.
Supermarket?
She felt people look at her, turn their heads, stare, and wonder. That only made it worse. She hated to draw attention, tried so hard to
Yeah, I feel like it
blend,
was a
to
good-
just
good
fade.
thing for them to swap. I feel
The
like
bus
you can
hiccuped
find less
by.
ammo and attachments for it, so it's
Though
not
her
super
breath
OP.
whistled in and out,
Back then when
the
it was,
pressure on her
like,
chest eased. She ordered herself to
ammo, oh
slow
my God.
down, just
Everyone was,
slow
like, dropping
down
ammo
and
'cause they
walk
had
like a
too
normal
much.
person. It took her a minute to manage it, and another to
Something little
orient
there.
herself.
Okay,
She
probably
hadn't had an
that
anxiety
list and
attack
have
that
her
severe
over
since the
there.
night before her first day in the classroom at Grady Middle.
None of this is
Marco, her best friend since kindergarten, had gotten her through that. And through the one, not quite as bad, before her first parent-teacher conference. Just a man catching the bus, she told herself. No threat, for God's sake. And she hadn't heard him inside her head. Believing you heard other people's thoughts equaled crazy. Hadn't her mother drummed that into her head since always?
I think we're right.
And now, because she'd had a moment of crazy, she had a solid half-mile walk. But that was fine. That was all right. It was a pretty spring evening, and she was, naturally, dressed correctly. The light raincoat, there'd been a 30% chance of rain, over the spring sweater, the sensible shoes.
Right now, I see them.
She liked to walk. And hey, think of all the extra steps on her Fitbit. So it messed up her schedule a little. What did it matter? She was a 26-year-old single female and had absolutely no plans for a Friday night in May. And if that wasn't depressing enough,
Let me
the anxiety attack worsened her headache.
on top right now.
She unzipped a section of her briefcase, took out a little pouch, and picked 2 Tylenol out of it. She downed them with water from the bottle in her briefcase. She'd walk to her mother's, pick up and sort the mail, as her mother refused to have the post office hold it when she was out of town, shred the junk
don't
mail,
think so.
put bills, correspondence, and so on in the correct trays in her mother's home office, open the windows to air out the duplex, water the plants, house and patio, as it hadn't rained after all, close the windows after 1 hour, set the alarm, lock the doors, catch the next bus, and go home. Toss dinner together. Friday night meant a salad topped with a grilled chicken breast and, yes, a glass of wine.
That was the most mischievous.
Grade papers, post grades. Sometimes she hated technology because school policy demanded she post those grades, then deal with students or parents who objected to same. She walked, ticking off items on her list while people around her headed toward happy hour or an early dinner or anywhere more interesting than her own destination. She didn't envy them too much. She'd actually had a boyfriend, had worked dinner dates, theater dates, movie dates into her schedule. Sex, too.
Where's that?
She thought it had all gone well, smooth and steady. Until he dumped her. That was fine, she
I
thought.
almost knocked one.
That was all right. It wasn't as if they'd been madly in love,
We're gonna try to
but she'd
press-
liked him,
I'm doing damage.
felt comfortable with
Yeah, yeah,
him,
you hold, you're doing wonderful.
and she'd thought the sex had been pretty good.
Yeah, but he shielded
Of course, when she'd had to tell her mother Grant wouldn't escort her to her mother's 46th birthday party, and why, the stylish, successful Jennifer Wilcox, Philly Brand Advertising Agency's media director, had rolled her eyes and done the expected, I told you so. Hard to argue, as, well, she had. Still, Breen had wanted to lash back. You got married at 19. You had me when you were 20. And less than a dozen years later, you pushed and pushed and pushed him out. Whose fault is it he walked away from me? Not just you, but me. Was it her own? Breen wondered. Wasn't she the common denominator with a mother who didn't respect her and a father who hadn't cared enough to stay in her life? Even after he'd promised. Old business, she told herself. Put it away. She spent too much time in her head, she admitted, and felt relieved to find herself a block away from her mother's townhouse. A pretty, tree-lined neighborhood. A successful neighborhood, one populated by successful people, business people, couples who enjoyed urban living, close access to good bars and restaurants, interesting shops. All those rosy red brick buildings, the perfectly painted trim, the sparkling windows. Here, people jogged or hit the gym before work, walked along the river, had elegant dinner parties, wine tastings, read important books. Or so she imagined. Her best memories bloomed from a tiny house where her bedroom had a slanted ceiling. An old brick fireplace in the living room, not gas or electric, but wood-burning, where the backyard was as full of adventure as the stories her father told her before bed at night.
Yeah, car is
Magical
nice.
stories
I like car.
of
But the
magical
DG car, I
places.
actually really like the car.
The arguments had spoiled it. The ones she heard through the walls, the ones she heard inside her head.
They should remove the
Then
car.
he'd gone
Delete
away.
it, fuck that gun.
At first, just for a week or two, and he'd take her to
When
the
the
zoo.
car first
She'd been
came out, I
desperate to be a
hated it,
vet
and I
back
was like,
then,
"Alright,
or
now
on a
it's a privacy."
picnic on his Saturday visit. Then, he simply hadn't come back. More than 15 years now, and she still hoped he would. She took the key out of her change purse, a key given to her with a detailed list of instructions 3 weeks before, when her mother had left for one of her business trips, followed by a restorative spa meditative retreat.
Oh, never mind. Are you going in the back?
She'd leave the key, along with a quart of milk and the other groceries on the list, after she picked up the mail the following Wednesday, as her mother returned Thursday
I
morning.
opened it. There was one thing of ammo.
She retrieved the mail from the box, tucked it under her arm before she unlocked the door, stepped into the foyer to deactivate the alarm, closed the door, put the key back into her change purse. She went back to the kitchen first, an HGTV contemporary marvel of stainless steel, white cabinets, white subway tile, farm sink, and walls the color of putty. She dumped her bag, the mail on the central island, hung her raincoat over a backless stool. After setting her timer for an hour, she began opening windows. Through the kitchen and great room, back to the living area, all open concept with glorious and gorgeous wide-planked flooring. Since the powder room had a window, she opened that too. Barely a breeze to stir the air, but the chore was on her list, and Breen followed the rules. Retrieved the mail to take upstairs. In the third bedroom, one her mother had redesigned into her office, she set the mail on the L-shaped counter that served as a workstation. Cafe au lait toned walls here, and chocolate leather for the desk chair. Ruthlessly organized shelves held awards. Her mother had garnered quite a few. Books, all work-related, and some framed photos, also work-related. Breen opened the trio of windows behind the workstation and wondered, as she always did, why anyone would put their back to that view. All the trees, the brick buildings, the sky, the world.
I'm just watching Strife move
Distractions, Jennifer told her when she'd asked.
Wait, what?
Work is work.
around. This is lagging on my screen.
She opened the
don't
two
get
side
it.
windows as well, the ones flanking a locked wooden filing cabinet.
Lagging back on my screen.
Wide windowsills held thriving green plants in copper pots.
Sounds like I'm on 100.
She'd water those and the rest after she opened the other windows. Then she'd sort the mail and wait out the timer. Close all the windows again, lock up, be done.
Where would the repulsor team come?
She
Probably
opened them in the
here, maybe
perfect,
Hydra.
welcoming guest room where she had never slept, in the guest bath, in the simple elegance of the master and its ensuite. She wondered if her mother ever took a man to that lovely bed with its summer blue duvet and plumped pillows,
Really?
and immediately wished she hadn't wondered.
Kinda wanna open
She went back downstairs, started for the patio door,
this down.
then backtracked as the phone in her bag rang. She glanced at the readout, never answer unless you know who was calling, and smiled. If anyone could make this crappy day a little better, it was Marco Olson. Hi.
I jumped on it.
Hi, your own self. It's Friday, girl. I heard that.
Knowing you're alive.
She took the phone outside to the patio with its stainless steel table and chairs and the tall, slim pots on the corners. Then get your well-toned ass down to Sally's. It's happy hour, baby, and the first round's on the
My
house.
head like you could see me.
Can't.
Good. No.
She turned on the hose,
bueno.
began to water the first of the pots. I'm at my mother's dealing with all that. Then I have papers to grade. It's Friday,
I'm getting
he
snapped at
repeated.
everyone, I'm
Shake it loose. I'm on the bar till 2, and it's sing out night.
No, I'm kidding.
The one thing she could do in
Oh,
public
okay.
without anxiety,
That's right.
especially after a drink and with Marco,
It's working.
was sing. I've got another. She checked the timer on her wrist. 43 minutes here, and those papers won't grade themselves. Grade 'em Sunday. You've had the brood on Breen, and that Grant asshole Weber's not worth it.
Anyone need
Oh, it's not just that. Him. I'm in, a kind of slump, that's all.
the hell was that?
Everybody gets dumped. You haven't. Have too. What about Smoking Harry? You and Harry decided mutually your relationship in that area had run its course and are still friends. That's not getting dumped.
Yeah.
She moved on to the next pot. You need some fun. If you're not here I'm giving you 3 hours so you can go home and change, put some sexy on your face. I'm coming to get you. You're working the bar. Sally loves you, girl. He'll come with me. She loved Sally, drag queen extraordinaire, right back. She loved the club where she felt happy, loved the gayborhood, which was why she lived in the heart of it, in an apartment with Marco. Let me get done here, then see how I feel when I get home. I've had a headache for the last couple hours, not making that up, and I had a stupid anxiety attack on the bus here that made it worse. I'm coming to pick you up, take you home. You are not. She moved on to the third pot. I took Tylenol and it's going to kick in.
Wait, I need that shield.
What happened on the bus? I'll tell you later. It was just stupid.
One's 22, one's
And you
inside.
may be right. I could use a drink, some Marco, some Sally's. Let me see how I feel when I get home.
Behind you.
You text me when you get there. Fine, now go back to work. I've got one more pot out here, the plants inside, the stupid mail, and the damn windows. You ought to say no sometime. It's not that big a deal. I'll be done in under an hour. Catch the bus home. I'll text you. Go pour some drinks. Bye. She went inside, carefully locked the patio door before she filled the watering can to deal with the inside plants. A breeze kicked up, had her standing by the window, eyes shut, letting it blow over her. Maybe it would rain after all, a nice, steady spring rain. It kicked up harder, surprising her because the sun continued to beam through the glass. Maybe we're in for a storm. She wouldn't mind that either. A storm might blow the damn headache away. And since Marco had given her 3 hours when 2 would do, she could spend that hour starting on the papers. Less guilt that way. Carrying the watering can, she started back upstairs, while the wind, it had graduated from breeze, sent the window treatments flying. Well, Mom, your house is definitely getting aired out. She walked into the office and into chaos. The bottom filing cabinet drawer hung open. She'd have sworn it was locked. Papers winged around the room like birds. Setting the watering can down, she rushed to grab at them, scoop them off the floor, snatch them from the air as the wind whirled, then died like a door had slammed shut while she stood with her hands full of paperwork. The ever-efficient Jennifer would be seriously displeased. Put it back, put it all back, tidy it all up. She'll never know. And there goes my extra hour. Sorry, Marco, no Sally's for me tonight. She picked up empty file folders, scads of paper, and sat at her mother's workstation to try to sort them out. The first file's label puzzled her. Allied Investments, Breen, 2006 to 2013. She didn't have any investments, was still paying off her student loans for her master's, and shared the apartment with Marco not just for the company, but to make the rent. Baffled, she picked up another folder. Allied Investments, Breen, 2014 to 2020. Another listed the information with the addition of correspondence. Had her mother started some sort of investment account for her and not told her? Why? She'd had a small college fund from her maternal grandparents and had been grateful as it helped her get through the first year. But after that, her mother made it clear she'd be on her own. You have to earn your own way, Jennifer told her, repeatedly. Study harder, work harder if you ever want to be more than adequate.
Okay, I'll get the purple then.
Well, she'd studied in between 2 part-time jobs to manage the tuition, then took out the loans she figured she'd be paying off this end of forever. And she'd graduated, adequately, landed an adequate teaching job, then added to the debt because she'd needed that master's degree to hold on to it. But there were investments in her name? Didn't make any sense. She started to sort through the papers, intending to make stacks that applied to each folder. She didn't get far. While she couldn't claim to know or understand much about investments or stocks or dividends, she could read numbers just fine. And the monthly report, as it clearly stated, for May of 2014, when she'd been struggling to make ends meet, working those 2 jobs and eating ramen noodles, listed the bottom line in the account as over $900,000. Not possible, she murmured. Just not possible.
They weren't like close to us.
But the name on the account was hers, with her mother's name listed as well.
Oh, you're too nice.
She pawed through
Josh.
others, found a consistency of a monthly deposit from the Bank of Ireland.
Send them to hell.
She pushed away from the workstation, walked blindly toward the windows as she yanked out the tie holding her hair back. Her father had sent her money every month.
Hey, yo.
Did he think that balanced just leaving her, never calling or writing or coming to see her? It doesn't. But her mother knew and hadn't told her. Knew and let her think he'd simply vanished, stopped paying child support, left them both without a thought.
If you say it like that.
And he hadn't. She had to wait until her hands stopped shaking, her eyes stopped
I
burning.
have literally 0 scope.
Then she went back to the workstation, organized the papers, read through the correspondence,
All right, let's go send some people.
studied the latest monthly report. The resentment, the grief, coalesced into a low and steady burn of fury.
Okay,
Taking
Josh,
out her
we
phone,
see you.
she called the
We
number
see
for the
you.
account manager.
I heard the hold open.
Benton Ellsworth.
Someone near here, right?
Yes, Mr. Ellsworth, this is Breen Kelly. Ms. Kelly, what a surprise. It's so nice to actually speak with you. I hope your mother is well.
I will go.
I'm sure she is. Mr. Ellsworth, I've just become aware that I have an account with your firm with funds and investments totaling $3,853,812.65.
Keep going.
Is this correct?
I want to craft. Oh, no.
I can get you the account value as of today, but I'm not sure what you mean you've become aware. Is this my money? Yes, of course.
Yeah, I see.
Why is my mother's name also on the account? Ms. Kelly,
Just like, they're gonna be around here.
he spoke slowly.
See, one's a
The account was opened when you were a minor, and you expressed the wish to leave the account in your mother's hands. I can promise you she's been scrupulous in overseeing your investments. How did I express this wish?
Broke 1, kicking left.
Ms. Wilcox explained that you had no desire to deal with the investments, and you never communicated with me or the firm to request the account be turned over to you exclusively. Because I didn't know it existed until today. I'm sure there's a misunderstanding. It might be best if I met with you and your mother to sort this out. My mother is out of town, currently at a retreat where she has no access to phone or internet. And some god somewhere had been looking out for her, Breen thought.
Over here.
But I think you and I should sort this out. I agree, absolutely. My assistant's gone for the day, but I can set up an appointment for Monday.
You're dead?
No, she'd lose her courage over the weekend. It would drain. It always did. How about now? Ms. Kelly, I was on the point of leaving the office myself when I took your call.
It's a different squad then.
I'm sorry to inconvenience you, but I think this is urgent. I know it is for me. I want to talk to you, get a better understanding of this situation before I contact a lawyer. In the silence, Breen squeezed her eyes shut. Please, she thought, please don't make me wait. It might be better if we met now,
Good.
talk this
I'm
all
just on my
through.
Smurf account,
I'm
so
sure, as I said, this is just a misunderstanding.
I don't know.
I've been told you don't drive, so
Wanna hear?
I don't have a car, she corrected, because I can't afford one, but I'm perfectly capable of getting to your office.
They see
I'll be there as soon as I can. I'll meet you downstairs in the lobby. We're a small firm, Ms. Kelly. Most will have gone for the weekend before you get here. All right. Thank you. She hung up before he could change his mind and sat, shaking again.
Do you guys want to come back and
Get your
host?
guts up, Breen. Get your stupid guts up and go.
I have 2 syringes left.
She put all the papers she'd stacked in their appropriate files. She left the watering can, left the file drawer open, and went downstairs. She thought of the bus, how long it would take her to get to the offices in City Center. Then she did something she'd never done. She took an Uber. Traffic was horrible, but then again, it was Friday rush hour. The Uber driver, a woman about her age, chatted, then stopped when Breen just put her head back and closed her eyes. She wanted to read through the files again, but she'd get carsick. Not a good way to meet the man who was apparently her investment broker for the first time. She needed a plan, but couldn't think through the distress, the anger. Her schedule for the weekend included, or had, sitting down to pay bills, juggle funds, squeeze them. She'd planned that sad chore for after her workout, at home, as she couldn't afford a gym membership. Not just couldn't afford, she admitted, but felt weird and uncomfortable working out with other people around. Whatever came of this meeting,
100 on pass?
she still had bills to pay. She opened her eyes to see they'd broken out of the worst of the traffic and made some progress along the river. The sun, dipping down in the west,
I missed
still
my shield
beamed,
pop. Yeah,
hit
I
the
missed
bridges, the water,
I would have survived.
made it
maybe
all
2 extra
shine to
seconds.
her
Maybe
eyes.
would have been dead.
No rain after all, she thought, and realized she'd left her raincoat in her mother's kitchen.
AT&T. Hi, JC.
Had she remembered to lock up? Reset the alarm? After a moment's anxiety, she closed her eyes again, walked herself back. Yes, she'd
Need
done
another
that.
juicer and
All
we
that
are
was just
Gucci.
autopilot.
We got stuck in ring and that was
When the car pulled up in front of the dignified brick building in the shadows of steel
Hey,
towers,
Josh, thanks for
she tipped the
stopping in.
driver.
Thank you.
There went Sunday
Playing
night
on Smurf
pizza.
account is always fun.
When she crossed the
Rob.
sidewalk,
How are you?
a man opened the door. He stood, tall and lanky, in a navy pinstriped suit, crisp white shirt,
I am
bold red
hungry.
tie. For some reason, the gray salted through his brown hair made her feel easier. He was older, she thought, experienced. He knew what he was doing. She sure as hell didn't. Ms. Kelly. He held out a hand. Yes, hello, Mr. Ellsworth. Please, come right in. My office is on the second floor. Do you mind the stairs?
Like
No.
Donald, I don't want to.
She saw a quiet, carpeted lobby with a glossy reception counter, several oversized leather chairs, a few big green plants in big terracotta pots.
It's like everyone just like.
I want to apologize for any part I've played in this misunderstanding, Ellsworth began as they walked up to the second floor. Jennifer, your mother, indicated you weren't interested in the details of the account. She lied. That hadn't been in the plan, whatever the plan might be, but it came right out of Breen's mouth.
Relic if there's no team.
To you, if you're telling me the truth. To me, by omission. I didn't know there was an account.
On the wall and one landing
Yes,
in the city.
well... Ellsworth gestured toward an open door.
You guys go.
His office, bigger than the living room in her apartment and airy due to the big windows, held an old mahogany desk beautifully refinished, a small leather sofa, 2 visitor chairs. A counter held a fancy coffee maker. Framed photos, obviously family, covered a floating shelf.
There's stacks of ammo.
How about some coffee? Yes, thank you. Milk, no sugar. Have a seat, he invited, while he walked to the coffee machine. I have all the files, she began, as she sat, pushed her knees together because they trembled. From what I can see, the account was opened in 2006. That's when my parents separated. That's correct. Can you tell me if the deposits starting then were child support payments? No, they were
Nancy
not.
Wheeler.
I'd suggest you speak to your mother about that, as I can only talk to you about this specific account.
Yeah.
All right. My mother opened the account.
I hate
Was
how
there anything-
Black
Ian
is
Kelly
like
opened the
20.
account in your name with your mother as guardian. He made arrangements at that time to have a monthly deposit wired from the Bank of Ireland
Not found one yet.
for your future, your education, your financial security.
Chat, should I go get something to
Now
eat
she
after
gripped her
church?
hands
So
together
it's
as
late,
they trembled
and I
too.
have to wake up
Wheeler's
kinda
You're
early,
sure?
you know, for,
I am.
Work tomorrow.
He handed her the coffee, then took his own and sat, not behind the beautiful desk with its computer, but in the chair beside hers. I arranged it for him. He came into the office, opened the account. I've been managing it since that time.
Oh, you dipped it?
Has he been in touch with you?
Dips, Trey?
Not since that time,
I
no.
was gonna say, I picked it
The
up and then I
deposits
heard
come.
the dips. I was like, oh,
Your
shit.
mother has overseen the account. She's been scrupulous, as I told you.
What happened? How
If you've looked over the reports, you'll see she's never taken out a penny. We have quarterly meetings, more if there's something we need to
We're
discuss.
on fire.
I had no reason to think you were unaware.
Yo, what's up, Jason?
Do you have many clients?
I heard that the tickets are gonna
Am
be
I a client?
really expensive.
He smiled at
for,
her. Yes.
For Blackpink.
Do you have many
Like,
clients who take no interest at all in an account worth almost $4 million? I know Allied's a prestigious firm, and that's probably a small account, but it's still a great deal of money. He took a moment, and she knew he chose his words with great care. There are situations where a parent or guardian, a trustee,
Yeah, it's
may be
expensive.
better suited to make the financial decisions. I'm an adult. She's not my guardian. She felt it, sensed it, knew it. She told you I was irresponsible, unable to handle money. Ms. Kelly, Breen, I don't want to get personal. I can tell you without hesitation, your mother has always had your well-being in mind. With your issues, what are my issues?
Free shit.
The anger rose up again, so much better than the nerves. Irresponsible. Not too bright either, am I? Maybe even just a little slow on the scale. He actually flushed a little. She certainly never said anything like that directly. Just implied. Well, let's get to know each other, Mr. Ellsworth. I have a master's degree in education, hard-earned just this past winter, and for which I owe a mountain of student debt. She saw the stunned look, nodded. I teach language arts at Grady Middle School and have since I graduated from college, already with considerable hills of debt despite working 2 part-time jobs. I'm happy to give you the name of my principal, names of various professors.
Exactly what's gonna happen.
That won't be necessary. I was under the impression you didn't work or hadn't kept a job. I've worked since I was 16, summers, weekends. I still work through the summer to pay off that debt, and I private tutor 2 evenings a week for the same reason. Tears began to swirl in her eyes, but they were hot, hot with anger. I shop sales or thrift stores, have a roommate. I balance my bank account, such as it is, to the penny every month. Here now, here.
Same as me.
He closed a hand over hers. I'm very sorry there's been this. Don't call it a misunderstanding, not when it was deliberate. My father wanted this money for me. Instead, I waited tables and took out loans to pay for college when the money he sent for me would have changed my life. Knowing he sent anything would have changed my life. She set the coffee aside, pulled in a breath to try to compose herself. I'm sorry. This is my mother's doing, not yours. Why wouldn't you believe her? You said I was your client. You are, and we're going to fix this. When is Jennifer due back? Next week, but I need to know something now. Is this my money? Yes. So I'm authorized to withdraw funds, transfer funds. Yes, but I think it would be best to wait until your mother's back, for the 3 of us to sit down and talk. I'm not interested in that. I want to transfer funds, establish another account in my name only. Can I do that? Yes, I can set up an account for you. How much do you want to transfer? All of it.
Look you.
Breen, All of it, she repeated.
Wow.
Or when I meet with you and my mother, I'll have a lawyer and I'll sue her for, I don't know, embezzlement. She hasn't touched the money. I'm sure a lawyer will know what term to use. I want my money, so the next time I sit down to pay bills, I can pay off my student debt and take a full breath again. This money came from my father into your hands. He trusted you to do the right thing by me. I'm asking you to do the right thing. You're of age. You can sign a document to have your mother's name removed from the account. I'll need to see your identification. You'll need to fill out some forms.
Someone coming across the
I'll
side.
need to call in one of our notaries and a witness.
We can go back to
He
where
laid
we
a
were.
hand over
back,
hers
one.
again. Breen,
Okay,
I
we
believe
just got
you.
this building done.
But would you mind giving me the name and number of the principal at your school?
Theirs.
Just for my own peace of mind. Not at all. Chapter 2. By the time Breen walked into Sally's, the place was in full swing.
Nick, knock,
Colored lights streamed over the crowded bar, the packed tables.
cracked her.
The spotlight beamed on Cher, or Sally's version thereof, belting out If I Could Turn Back Time. Truer words, Breen thought. She made her way through the enthusiastic crowd, even managed to smile when someone waved or called her name. Marco caught her eye, bless him, sent her a quick salute as he mixed drinks.
No, you're good. You're good.
He wore a spangled silver
This year
shirt.
alt is moving.
Sally's was a
It's
spangly
moving!
place. Snug black pants and a silver hoop in one ear. Recently, he'd started
That's
sporting a
fucking
little
hilarious.
goatee, and she thought it suited him, like the long braids he
Sorry,
tied
what about
back.
the guy that you
His
knocked?
cocoa skin gleamed.
Dead, he's dead.
Okay, he's dead.
Sally's was hot, in more ways than one. Gio, give our girl a seat. No, that's okay.
One of them's down, that's why.
But Gio, small, thin, and resplendent in red, hopped
Three
right
teams,
off the
so
stool.
Middle, top here,
You
and then
sit,
left
sweetie
side
pie.
as well.
I gotta make the rounds
And there's a
anyway.
team down here as well,
He
too.
gave her a kiss
And
on
a
the
team
cheek.
here, so there's 5
Our
teams
baby
here.
looks
He
tired.
just ran out the door.
I guess I am. She took the stool while Marco filled an order, then poured her a glass of white wine.
Yeah, teammate, come around, come around.
You're late, and you didn't even change. That's some sad outfit, girl. Then his eyebrows shot up when she downed half the glass in one go.
Want to push these guys?
Yeah.
Okay, that looks like the end of a rough day.
Sears up.
Rough, strange, scary, exhilarating,
Bounce one.
and she burst into tears. Gio, I'm taking my break.
Bro, no fucking
He rushed through the pass-through, grabbed Breen's arm, and pulled her with him into the backstage area. A couple of the performers sat in front of the Hollywood lights on their makeup counters, gossiping.
You can queue here too.
Ladies, we need the room. One of them, done up gorgeous like Gaga, pulled Breen into an embrace. There, baby girl. It's all going to be all right. You trust Jimmy now. No man's worth your tears.
Oh, behind you,
Another kiss on the cheek, and with Sally moving into gypsies, tramps, and thieves, Marco sat Breen down. What happened, honey? Tell me everything. My father... Marco gripped her hand tighter. He got in touch? No, but he...
I'll try to
Marco,
refuse
he's
it.
been sending money since I was 10.
So
He started an account, an investment account with Allied, and he's wired money every month. She didn't tell me. She never told me, kept it locked in a drawer. And all this time... She looked down at her hands. I forgot my wine. I'll go get it. Wait, it's... Marco, I have, as of today, because there were dividends and I have to learn about all of this, but as of today, I have $3,878,596.35. He goggled at her. Did you have a dream or something? Baby, you know sometimes you have those dreams. No, I've just come from a meeting with my broker. I have almost $4 million, Marco.
This is for my family.
You sit right here. Don't move. I'm going to get the wine. I'm going to get the bottle. She sat and caught a glimpse of herself in the mirror. Really pale, she realized. Eyes tired. She'd pulled out her hair tie, and the work she'd done that morning blowing it smooth was wrecked. And the brown rinse she used once a week to calm down the red, too much attention, too distracting, had faded to mouse.
Yeah,
Didn't
they
matter,
changed a
she
lot of
thought.
things from
Just
this,
didn't
for this
matter.
season on KC.
As soon as she
You
unloaded
haven't
herself on
been
Marco,
playing, right?
she'd
You were
go
playing
home,
Valorant
lie
or something,
down.
maybe?
Grading papers had to wait until her head cleared.
There.
Since she intended to drink at least 2 glasses of wine before she walked home,
I don't
it
need
wouldn't
those,
be
actually.
cleared tonight. He came back with the bottle, 2 glasses, poured each before he sat.
I will not.
I
pull a
think
scene
let's
like that.
backtrack
I
a
will
little.
give it to you.
How did you find out? It's the strangest thing, Marco.
Oh, thank you, Jason.
And she
There
told
was
him
nothing
everything.
in this box.
I gotta go back here a minute, Marco said. You went to this broker guy's office by yourself? That was brave, Breen.
There's a guy on me, bro.
I didn't know what else to do. I was so
I
mad.
was too busy fucking.
Who tells you need to get mad more? A smile flitted. You do?
No,
Like I'm saying now, you need to stay mad when you talk to your mom.
I'm trying. I'm moving
Oh,
back
God.
At the same time as, you know,
She dropped her
you
head
save
into her
yourself, you
hands,
save yourself,
really
you save
wanted to drop it
yourself.
between her
He's coming in the
knees.
ring right now.
Don't you go jellyfish now.
Open it.
He glanced back as Sally, in full share,
It couldn't
glided
be
into the room.
Loba, because
Salvador
the fist
Trevino
would
put
open,
one
right?
hand on the hip of his knockoff Bob Mackie sequined gown, flipped back the waist-length fall of wig.
I thought, like, out of
They're
all
backed
the
up at the
squads,
bar,
it would
Marco.
just, like,
What the
not bother
fuck?
us, but people are
Sorry,
playing
Sally.
like pussy,
Breen-
So,
Sally shot up a finger, heavily lashed eyes narrowing on Breen's face.
are
you sick, my darling girl?
Sorry, I honestly
No,
could've
no, I'm
went
so
out of the
sorry.
bed
I
a little
just...
earlier,
You look
but you can see
sick.
what happened.
He cupped Breen's chin in his hand. Pale as a genuine virgin on her wedding night. Is it that asshole Grant?
And the audio
No,
engineering
nothing
on
like
this
that.
Fucking phenomenal.
Good, 'cause he's not worth it. When did you eat
There's
last?
no way that was a Loba.
I-
There's just no
She
way.
couldn't quite remember.
Clip it.
Just what I thought. Marco, you take our girl home and get her some food.
So I tried to
You got
open
any
the
red
bids
meat?
for you guys, just to see what you guys
Probably
could land
not.
on, and
Sally
all
shook
3
his
bids were
head,
empty.
executed a perfect Cher-style
You knew I
hair
was going
flip
there, so
back,
there's nothing.
then gave a
Yeah,
come-ahead with
exactly.
one hand.
That team
Give me your
was a
phone.
dev
I
team.
can't keep one in this outfit. Taking Marco's phone, he tapped in a number, tapped his glittery gold stiletto. Bo, you handsome bastard,
This
it's
new
Sally.
legend is called
I'm
Vantage.
better than I look, and I look
He
fabulous.
allows
I need you to
to
put a couple of
snipe
your
with a
cheesesteak specials
really,
together
really,
for me for
really easy,
pickup.
like, target.
Yeah,
Like,
the
kinda
works,
high
my
risk
man.
person for you.
Put it on my
It's
tab.
so
Marco's
terrible,
coming by
Jens.
for them.
Like,
I'll see you
Hey,
soon,
Bravo,
and give that
this
pretty
fight
wife and
was
gorgeous baby of
legend
yours
on the
kisses
map
for
of
me.
KC.
And here's one for
You're
you.
literally in the open getting
He made a
sniped at by
long
Vantage.
smacking sound,
Like, a
then
lethal
handed the phone
game.
to Marco. You go by Philly Pride, get those cheesesteaks. Then, Breen, you get out of those clothes and into some PJs. You should listen to Sally and toss those clothes right out the window for somebody with no fashion sense to pick up. I can't leave you in the lurch on a Friday night, Marco began, and got the withering eye. You don't think I can handle the stick? Boy, I've been handling sticks of all natures since before you were out of diapers. And looking as good as I do, I expect to rake in some fine tips. Take that girl home. Thank you, Sally. Rising, Breen went in for a hug, just laid her head on Sally's shoulder. The man had been more of a mother to her than her own for the last decade. We'll talk soon, and you call me if you need me. Not before 10 in the morning unless it's an emergency. I need my beauty sleep. No, you don't. You're the most beautiful person I know.
Could we continue rotating?
Go
here?
on, take
So we can
off.
give her a
I've got a
little-
club to run. They went out the back.
I do wanna
Marco's
find out
arm
if she
automatically
knows
went
that.
around Breen's waist. Her head automatically tipped toward his shoulder. I'm so tired all at once, Marco.
R9
I don't know if I can eat.
I'm decent with this.
You'll eat or I'll tell Sally. Then I'm going to tuck you into bed. He walked her along the brick-paved streets under the rainbow streetlights. The clubs,
They're
the
getting shot at.
restaurants,
They're
the
getting shot at.
cafes were all
I
hopping.
see it. So we have to be a little careful.
Dropping heavy in light.
First blood already? We flame out this soon. Why'd you even come?
Extended light mag here. Level 2.
That was perfect in sync.
And sync?
Okay. I don't know why, but you said in sync, and I almost sang One Direction.
I know.
I don't
What?
know
Wait.
why that-
I
don't
would
know why that
forgive
popped in
you
my
if
head.
you said Backstreet Boys. Holy fucking
I don't know
god.
what- I don't know why that popped in my head. Where are they?
Right here.
There's a clueless
That
body out
building.
there.
So they're okay. One has charge rifle.
There's two teams
Yeah.
though. That's the thing. Someone opened a hold really close to us.
Just down here, down here.
Fast three.
He went to the other side over here.
I'm fine here as well.
First one.
Hit 28 flash.
Down that guy.
Nice shot.
Nice. I'm just gonna move up a little.
Reloading.
Yeah, I'm right behind you. On the roof, on the roof.
Down.